Alright, what's up everyone? This is Sam, coach of your Great Lakes Grimmsnarls, and today we are here for a team overview for our team for the Great Lakes Grimmsnarls in the VBA Season 3. Um, some things about this format. We did a quick draft, so it was pretty much just, there's 2 minutes per pick. We got the whole draft with 12 teams, 11 picks each, done in 51 minutes, which is wild. So that does explain. I'm going to use that to explain one of my later picks that we thankfully were able to correct. But that being said, some things about this format. First off, is so there's no max, no Dynamax, which changes how things are prioritized. You know, things like wide guard is more important. I think having more fake out users is good. I think feint gets a lot better. Um, protect also, by extension gets a lot better, which is why feint gets better. But there's also no legendaries, so not just restricteds are banned, but like even stuff like the legendary dogs, the birds, everything is banned. Um, so it really creates a different power dynamic between certain Pokemon because it's like, okay, well, normally, you'd take. I mean, most teams end up with one or two legendary mons, regardless of, like if they're trying to. And, Tornadus is one of the best tailwind setters. So it creates a weird power vacuum. I think it made some interesting interactions in this tier list. But with that being said, we're gonna just go through and start off with my first pick here. Oh, hey now, I'm a professional, guys. I swear. So our first pick is Cinderace. We were sixth pick out of 12 overall, so basically the worst it could get. And so basically where I was at was I need to have a strong mon that isn't going to get sniped right away. I mean, I had plans like I had Rillaboom, but Rillaboom got taken first because it's insanely busted in this format. So I took Cinderace. We had Cinderace last season in the VBA, and it did a lot of work with Dynamax. But I actually think it's not really worse in this format. I think a lot of people tend to think without Max, it's not going to be doing a whole lot, but I tend to disagree with that. Um, Libero becomes a really interesting defensive mechanic with no Max because you can change your typing so that they're gonna hit me with a rock slide. Let me switch to steel type and take that. So and that's a lot more prevalent in my opinion. You're also not pigeonholed into certain moves because of their max moves. Like for example, you don't always have to run a flying move because you don't get to use max airstream, and usually Cinderace wants to, in my experience. So it also provides us just really great offensive support and a base 119 speed tier, um, in combination with moves like its coverage moves that you wouldn't normally use in a max format, like Flare Blitz, Sucker Punch. In my opinion, is better here. Stuff like Acrobatics is better as well. Since you're maxing, it's usually better than Bounce. So yeah, I'm excited to see what Cinderace does in this format. I think it's not going to pilot exactly the same as in a max format, but I think it'll be good. Next up, we took Azumarill. So Azumarill is in a very similar vein. And by the way, on the right here, um, it will say, man, I suck at this, don't I? Some of these moves are not updated for the current gen, so like Azumarill does not get knockoff anymore. Um, but other than that, so in a non-max format, I find Azumarill to be maybe even better than in a max format because a lot of the times you have to invest a lot of uh, a lot of offensive investment in order to, whoa, sorry, neighbors. You have to invest a lot of offense in order to live or to be able to like do enough damage to max mons But in this format, you can afford to invest a lot more bulk, along with the fact that you can click Belly Drum, and even next to like a fake out user, if you fake out correctly, Belly Drum can be pretty safe. So that makes a nice that makes it that makes a nice part. It starts our Firewater Grass core, which I think is really nice in this format, and it also just gives us more offensive power. Azumarill is a huge threat. Aqua Jet, a huge power. Aqua Jet is insane. So that being said, our third pick is kind of a strange one, but it's Thwackey. Um, Thwackey was in tier 4. Azumarill was tier 2, by the way. I didn't mention that. Thwackey is tier 4. And I didn't want to take it. It seems weird to take a tier 4 so early, but when it's a mon like Thwackey, I think it was a good deal. I think Thwackey's amazing value for the tier. I mean, it's Rillaboom Light, right? Knockoff and Fake Out, and along with like Grassy Surge and then Grassy Glide. It's base 85 attack, but with Terrain Boost, Woodhammer is still doing a decent amount. Is it going to be like OHKOing everything? No. But it also opens up a lot of possibilities with like putting Grassy Seed on things to increase their defense, which I think, again, is better without Max being a thing. And just in general, without things having the ability to max, Thwackey's damage output is going to look a lot better. So I'm excited to use Thwackey. It's going to be our Eviolite holder most of the season. But that being said, our next pick was Reuniclus. So I know the first 3 we picked don't exactly scream Trick Room. Azumarill works under Trick Room, but base 50 speed is not exactly the best for it. That being said, Azumarill does still function under Trick Room. But along with that, Reuniclus is not only an amazing Trick Room setter, very good at what it does, it also is able to just do a lot of damage with that base 125 special attack stat and its decent coverage. In a format like this, too, I feel like it's extra important to be able to have speed control in either the fast way or the slow way. So having Tailwind or Trick Room, because of how important, and you can't just like cheat speed control with Max Aeostream either. And I also, first 3 I grabbed were physical, and I knew Intimidate was going to be a hot commodity in this format. So Reuniclus also provided me with a special attacker. It also has 3 really good and relevant abilities as well. Like all 3, Overcoat, Magic Guard, and Regenerator, are all very usable and all have like a certain place. So while they're not necessarily game changing all the time, except for maybe Overcoat, Magic Guard lets you run a Life Orb for free, which again, I know I'm gonna keep saying this, but in a non-max format, that's awesome. But overall, I think Reuniclus is going to perform really well in this format, and I'm excited to use it. It also gave me a base 30 speed Mon, which I try to look for 1, at least on every team. Next up, we took Noivern. So Noivern was a tier 3, and it provides us mainly Tailwind, fast Tailwind, base 123 speed Tailwind. So like I said before, I think Trick Room and Tailwind are both extra good in this format. I also think that being a fast taunt user is great. And just the fact that while it only has base 97 special attack, Draco Meteor hits hard. And in this format, you can afford to run a lot more bulk on Noivern, because normally in a max format, it's like, okay, well, this thing is never living a max move, so I'm just putting a sash on it and running max speed and special attack, right? Well, in this format, it's a lot more likely to live hits because the hits aren't as strong. So you can run a lot more bulk on it as well. But it's just a really good and consistent Tailwind setter. I've seen it taken in almost every league I've ever been in, and it's performed well in almost all of them. It's always a pain to prep against. Because it's like it combines the Tailwind ability with just nuking ability, both of which are really really powerful. Um, it also gets Frisk, which is insanely good in draft, like unbelievably good. Being able to like get a read on your opponent's sets is really big. It also starts our fantasy core as well. Next up, we took Bisharp. So Bisharp is a tier 2, and we took him in the free slot. So we used 75 of our 150 points on him. A couple things about Bisharp that made him good for the team. Um, Number one, he functions well under Tailwind because he's base 70 speed. But not only that, he has base 125 attack and Defiant. Um, while yes, it does add another physical attacker to our team, the competitive options available weren't super great. So I kind of decided, okay, we're gonna go with Defiant. Um, Inner Focus isn't useless either, especially with how prevalent Fake Out is in this format, and it's really gonna allow us to scare off Intimidators. Because Cinderace and Azumarill, especially being on a team, are really gonna draw those Intimidators in prep. So Bisharp is a nice way to deter that, because at +1 attack he's doing a lot of damage with his base 125 attack stat. He also gets really great moves like Assurance and Quick Guard, and Sucker Punch is great, as well as just moves like Iron Head are really good. So I'm really excited to use this mon. He's always been one of my favorites, and I've never like been able to use him. So I think he's gonna perform really well in this team. And next up, we took Butterfree. So this does provide us with a double up on flying typing. However, with the way our overall type chart worked out, I think it's okay. Um, so overall, Butterfree's mainly here to provide Rage Powder support. Um, the combination of that and the ability to click Sleep Powder means that a lot of the times, if people think Butterfree's coming or if they're scared of it, especially there's a few teams in this division who don't even have a grass type, are gonna have to tech Safety Goggles on something, which is essentially just somewhat of a wasted move slot. If you can force an item in prep, that's super valuable in my opinion. So not only that, but Compoundized Sleep Powder is really good. It's almost as good as Spore. Uh, However, it's not only good at redirection, it also can click Tailwind. It's not as good of a Tailwind setter as Bisharp, um, and or I said Bisharp as Noivern as Noivern, but having two on a team I think is really good, especially when you consider the fact that Fake Out and Taunt are going to be so prevalent in this format. Well, how do you know which one is carrying Tailwind if I bring both? Um, Not only that, Pollen Puff is extra nice here because it restores half of the target's max HP, which is better when you're hitting non-Dynamax targets. Um, so yeah, I'm really excited to use Butterfree. I think it's really abusable with like Tailwinds plus Sleep Powder if you can make it live. That is going to be one problem with Butterfree, is its defenses are basically 0. So you are going to have to essentially rely on a sash or protection from its partner to really sorry about that, to really take advantage of its usage. But the thing is, though, I mean, it with sash, especially if you're running protect to avoid fake out, you can I think it's gonna be pretty reliable to get up a Tailwind or a Rage Powder. And usually with this team, I think one Rage Powder is going to be enough. If they can't break Sash and you get 2 off, then it's like you're golden. It allows Azumarill to belly drum. It allows Cinderace to just kill something or click Bulk Up. But yeah, I really like Butterfree. I think it's going to do really well here. Next up, we took Hitmonchan. So, Raz, I have a message for you. You suck, and we're not friends anymore. I was gonna take Hitmonlee here. With terrain, Hitmonlee's very good. Not to mention it gets Wide Guard, Fake Out, Feint, and Quick Guard, which are all like insanely good moves in this format. But Raz sniped it from us. We, in hindsight, should have taken it earlier. I probably should have prioritized that over even Noivern, probably, because we had backups for Noivern. But I think Hitmonchan is still okay. It's not as good as Hitmonlee on this team. However, Iron Fist with Mach Punch or, um, Elemental Punches, Bullet Punch, it still gets Quick Guard, Fake Out, and Feint. The only thing it doesn't get is Wide Guard that Hitmonlee gets. But yeah, I still think it's going to be good. Inner Focus is a great ability in this format. It provides me another way to mitigate, intimidate, hurting my team, as well as it just kind of says hey, you, like, yes, this could just click Fake Out and then like die, but it could like hit you with a Choice Band, Iron Fist, Mach Punch, and that does a lot. So I still think it's going to be good. I've used it before in a max format in mainly a support role, and it did well. I think it has more viability as an offensive piece as well in this format. And just, I needed another Fake Out user too. I debated replacing Hitmonlee with like Halucha, but then, I'm like, I don't want three flying types, and I need a Fake Out user. So I think Hitmonchan is going to do well. So next we picked Haunter. And I didn't mention Hitmonchan was 50 points out of our free points, and Haunter is 25 in tier 4. So, one main thing about Haunter, reason I took it, was the fairy matchup here isn't particularly amazing. We don't have a ton of weaknesses, but we also don't have a ton of resists, and I always like to be maybe even a little over prepared for fairy types, because fairy types are really good. So I decided, you know what? Hunter is good value in tier 4. It gets a ton of coverage. It has base 115 special attack and 95 speed. It's always holding a sash, especially, I don't even think its bulk is high enough to justify Eviolite, even if I didn't have Thwacky on my team, but I'm not worried about the two overlapping at all. It's really just an offensive coverage piece, but it does get Will-O-Wisp, and it technically gets Trick Room, but I don't see myself running that very much. But overall, it gets a good support move pool too in Icy Wind, Will-O-Wisp, and Taunt. So those are all really good options, as well as, packing a considerable punch. So next up, we took Double in tier 5. So the main thing about Double that I really like is, it's a tier 5 that functions, and there are honestly not a ton of those, so I was happy to get one. The tier 5 in this league was overall pretty weak. However, I think Double is very good. I think Iron Defense or Cotton Guard, Body Press sets with Fluffy are disgusting in this format. I think it's a lot harder to break through than in a max format. As well as, Bulletproof can be useful as well. I think mostly you're running it for Fluffy, but again, Bulletproof can do stuff as well. It doesn't get, a ton of our like important moves here on our in the bottom right, but it doesn't need to. It also gets Grassy Glide, so that is something. I don't think, it's not going to be doing a ton of damage. Base 80 attack, note non-stab, but it is like an option. It is nice to have priority on something, even if it's not super strong. So yeah, I think Double's gonna do well. I don't, it's a tier 5. You can't expect it to come every week, but in the weeks it does come, I think it could do really well. So, so my last pick was planned to be Stonejourner, and in hindsight, it was really dumb of me to think I was gonna get it at last pick, because it's one of the best tier 5s. It wasn't a high priority for me. That's why I waited so long. But I do think that. So the reason I wanted it was, well, it's a rock. It gives me a rock type. It functions as a wide guard user. Overall, just has decent offenses. And Power Spot is useful, which is not something you can say for every tier 5 in this league. So then I'm like, well, okay, so now what do I take? Because as you can see here on the bottom right, I do not have a wide guard user. And I think wide guard is super vital in this format. So, especially because I took a redirector. So now I'm like, well, okay, what do I do? So I go on Showdown and I filter to mons that learn wide guard. And I'm like, oh. So my options are like a bunch of NFEs, Onyx, and Avalog. Well, I didn't see Avalog at first. So I'm like, okay, screw it. We're taking Onyx. Then I looked at Onyx's stats and realized, holy crap, does this thing do nothing? 160 defense, but then every other stat is just abysmal. I I should have looked more. I should have looked more carefully. I was like, oh, this thing gets body press. It probably gets iron defense then too. That at least is something. Well, no, it doesn't get iron defense. It only gets body press. So it's really bad. Like, this mon is pretty awful. Is it the worst tier 5? No. Things like Combuskin and some like really whack tier 5s went in my division just because tier 5 is so weak. So like, is Onyx as bad as Combuskin? No, it's not. Combuskin is way worse. But I was like, okay. Well, it did give me nice typing. I don't have a ground type. That's nice. But now I'm like, well, okay, this isn't great because like how basically this mon does nothing other than just click fake out or click wide guard. So now then I was like, okay, well, that was not good. Oh no, that was not good. And so I decided to drop a trade right away and get Avalog in tier 5. This mon is just, it gets wide guard, but it's just better. It has, you can see down at the bottom, base 28 speed, which gives me another good Trick Room abuser, as well as 117 attack. It's literally just better than Onyx in every way. 117 attack, 95 HP with 184 defense. Yes, the special attack is bad, but we have mons like Hitmonchan and other like just generally bulky mons like Reuniclus to like take advantage of that. Plus like it also gets wide guard, but it also gets iron defense and body press and just good coverage moves. So overall, I think this mon is going to be way better. I also don't have like a mon on this team that screams like give me Assault Vest. I need Assault Vest. So Avalog is kind of that in case I ever need to. But Avalog is just infinitely better. It's probably one of the best tier 5s. And it didn't get taken, which is actually really surprising. But sadly, we don't have a Swagger user to pair with it for own tempo. But I think even Sturdy could be pretty good. I don't remember if own tempo negates Intimidate. So yes, it does block Intimidate. I just wanted to look that up and make sure. So that, provides us another Intimidate answer alongside our Defiant and our Inner Focus and all that going on. So overall, I'm really happy with my team. I do think it ended up a little physical heavy. I think if I have a matchup where I need special offense, like I'm gonna kind of have to like ride hard on Reuniclus. And Reuniclus is great, but on its own, it's got to set Trick Room and then go off. So, it's a little bit harder. But overall, I think I'm really happy with this team. I've never played in a non-max format before. Since Gen 8 was my first generation playing competitive, and this is my first league playing a non-max format in it. So I'm really excited to see how I adapt to this league because it is going to be a learning curve, especially for the first little bit here. Shout out to, let's see, I got to thank Wade or El Flamingo. He's my front office for this league, and he helped me come up with this draft plan, which I am super happy with. My first plan was to take Dracovish, which, excuse me. which I think was good. I think Dracovish maybe is better than Cinderace in this format, but I used Cinderace before. I know it's going to work well. And I think it pairs nicely with stuff like Azumarill and Thwackey. So, yeah, I'm really happy with this team overall. I think it's going to do well if I can, assuming I can pilot it well. Type matchups ended up pretty okay. Yes, we have a negative matchup against fire and electric and flying and rock. Well, one thing to keep in mind is Cinderace isn't really weak to rock, and it actually, against rock types, it's going to be turning into a rock or a fighting type, so it's actually kind of counts in the opposite way, which would put us at neutral to rock. Flying, yes, could be an issue, and I may have to address that since my only stab anti-flying option is Avalugg. But it's not as crazy as it normally is, in my opinion, because you can't just get destroyed by Airstream. And it's gonna be a lot easier to eliminate one specific threat as well. So overall, yeah, I'm really happy with this team. I think there's a few things I might change in the future with trades, but other than that, I'm pretty happy with how this team turned out. Yeah, shout out to El Flamingo again. Raz, I hate you, and I hope you win all your matches.